African countries need to understand how the world works and how they fit into it. This means looking at how countries interact and use their power. Knowing this helps a country decide what to do on the world stage, based on what's important to them. But when a continent like Africa is controlled and mistreated, it can't do this kind of analysis well. Since the times of Arab and Western slavery and colonization, African countries have struggled to understand global events, especially those that happen without their involvement, or even against them. Other international powers, especially Western countries, have been the ones using these global strategies. They do it in ways that benefit themselves, not Africa. As a result, Africans tend to see the world as the powerful Western countries describe it, not understanding Africa's true role. They often think about Africa based on ideas that others have created for them, ideas that are spread through powerful media. This can be boiled down to two main types of propaganda. The first is the belief that Africa has no history, culture, or civilization of its own. This idea suggests that Africa hasn't contributed to world history or humanity, often linked to the false notion of the natural inferiority of black people. This led to the Western civilizing mission during colonization, where the idea was to civilize Africa by imposing Western history, culture, religion, and institutions. The second type of propaganda is economic. It portrays Africa primarily as a source of raw materials for the rest of the world. This view, established during colonial times, continues to influence how Africa is seen today, as a continent rich in resources but poor in economic terms, ranking low on various global economic indicators. Cheikh Anta Diop, in a 1984 conference, emphasized that this process involves attacking Africans intellectually and morally before any physical harm, leading to the erasure of their cultural and moral identity. This propaganda portrays Africans as perpetual dependents, contributing nothing and always needing help. The idea is to present Africans as insignificant, paving the way for the world to accept their eventual disappearance. Jean-Marie Diafai, in his book, The Identity Card, also argues that to destroy a people, one must first attack their soul, beliefs, religion, culture, and history. The end goal of such propaganda is to eliminate Africans or make them a minority in their own land, allowing others to take over African territories and resources. There's historical evidence to consider. In North America, Western strategies significantly reduced the Native American population, leaving them as minorities in their own land. Similarly, in Australia, the indigenous Aboriginal population was largely replaced by Western Australians. In South Africa, during apartheid, there were efforts to develop bacteriological weapons to target the indigenous black population. There are also unconfirmed claims that HIV, initially found in the United States, was introduced into Africa as a bioweapon, particularly affecting South Africa and its neighbors, leading to millions of AIDS deaths and damaging Africa's image. The main reason for the threat against African people is the continent's immense natural resource wealth. Africa has been historically rich, with its resources used to build ancient civilizations like the pharaonic civilization in Egypt, which dominated for millennia. This wealth was also evident during the height of African empires, described by Cheikh Anta Diop as a time of extraordinary riches. Europe became aware of Africa's wealth, leading to their arrival in the 15th century and subsequent efforts to control the continent for Western dominance. Cecil Rhodes, a key figure in British colonization, and French writer Paul Leroy-Beaulieu both acknowledged the critical role of colonization for their country's survival and power. Rhodes linked imperialism to solving social problems in the UK, while Leroy-Beaulieu saw colonization as vital for France's status as a global power. These were the words of Cecil Rhodes. In order to save the 40 million inhabitants of the United Kingdom from a murderous civil war, we colonizers must conquer new lands in order to settle the surplus of our population, to find new outlets for the products of our factories and mines. Empire, I've always said, is about the belly. If you want to avoid civil war, you have to become an imperialist. These were the words of Paul Leroy-Beaulieu. Colonization is for France a matter of life and death. Either France will become a great African power, or it will be in a century or two only a secondary European power. It will count in the world, much as Greece or Romania count in Europe. Houphouët-Boigny, the first president of Côte d'Ivoire, said, "Whoever has Africa will dominate the world." This is a truth. Because whoever has Africa will be the master of the world's raw materials. Either it valorizes these materials for its economy, or it prevents these raw materials from reaching the opposing camps. The second reason for the threat against Africans is the significance of their historical contributions. Africa, particularly in its pharaonic era, played a crucial role in civilizing parts of Asia, ancient America, and Europe. The Moors, who were black Africans from the Maghreb region, along with the Arabs, were instrumental in the medieval re-civilization of Europe. However, world history has often been rewritten by Western and other hegemonic powers to erase Africa's central role. This rewriting serves as a tool of domination, and by diminishing African history, these powers aim to maintain their global influence. Moreover, the idea of helping Africa from foreign nations is often misleading. Nations that appear to be aiding Africa actually have their own agendas, mainly centered around accessing Africa's rich resources and controlling the narrative of history. These nations, including Western powers, China, and Russia, are not truly allies of Africa but are driven by their interests. Conflicts on the African continent, like terrorist attacks and wars, often involve external powers. The rise of China has led to increased investment in Africa, not for altruistic reasons but to access vital resources. Africa often finds itself caught in the middle of these global power struggles, underscoring the absence of genuine allies in its quest for sovereignty and progress. More Africans, influenced by researchers like Sheikh Anta Diop, are recognizing that ancient Egyptians were black and their ancestors. This understanding helps them reclaim their history and break free from the biases of colonial education. Despite being less developed and industrialized, Africa is seeing economic growth. The middle class is expanding, and new cities are emerging across the continent. Africa's strategic positioning on the world stage involves several key steps. 1. Unity among African nations. It's crucial for African countries to unite and form a federal state. The colonial borders created during the Berlin Conference should be torn down. This unity will enable them to stand as a strong bloc against superpowers, defend themselves, control their resources, and fully develop their potential. With Africa's vast land area of 25 million square kilometers and its abundant resources, a united African state could become an extremely powerful entity on the global stage. 2. Inclusion of Africans in the diaspora. Africans living in the Americas, especially in the West Indies, should be integrated into this federal structure. Similar to how Jewish communities support Israel, Africans and minority populations abroad should advocate for Africa's interests. 3. Strategic diplomacy. Africa must skillfully navigate the differences between world powers for its benefit, while recognizing that it doesn't have true allies. 4. Ethical leadership. The aim of a united African superpower wouldn't be to replicate destructive behaviors like plundering or polluting. What are your thoughts on the proposed strategy for Africa to form a united federal state encompassing all black countries on the continent? Do you believe this unity could effectively empower Africa to navigate global challenges and assert its interests on the world stage? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Consider clicking the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed to this channel. Thanks for listening.